welcome to Caroline Parker, in today's topic is going to be talking about implementing SEN pathways in a primary school. Very hot topic, especially with the amount of SEN in schools at the moment. So I'd just like to hand over to you, Caroline. Could you tell us a bit about yourself and how you've got to where you are as a head teacher?
Yeah, of course. So I'm at a school in Cheltenham. It's a one-form entry primary school. Cheltenham's, known for being quite affluent, but I'd say Gloucester Road is not a typical Cheltenham school. I have worked here for far too long, about 12 years now, I think, maybe more. I've lost count. Started one day a week as the Senko, and increased my hours as the heads changed and from priorities, and then became um the Senko, and then in 2022 became the head teacher. Prior to that, I'd worked in a couple of other schools and worked for NASON, and so have a really sort of varied special needs led career. Started my career as a TA in a special school, so I think that's quite good to start in places like that where you're at the talk face, if you like, of things before you're making the decisions on those things.
Yeah.
Gloucester Road has got 48% children speak English as an additional language. We actually have 29 first languages other than English. We've got 37% pupils with special needs and 26% pupil premium.
Okay.
So quite complex and diverse.
Do you think being a Senko before has helped shape you as a school leader?
Definitely. As I said, been Senko since 2013. And so did become really entrenched in the various and complex needs across our school, and then working for other schools as a sort of SEN advisor, and for NASON, you just are immersed in special needs and provision and meeting people's needs, and how challenging it is for teachers to meet such a wide variety of needs in one classroom, even with teaching assistant support. Needs can range from autism to dyslexia, medical needs, patient needs, and more. One person with maybe one TA, two TAs if you're lucky, and you've got to meet those demands with a HEAC language for so many socioeconomic demands.
So every school's SEN provision looks slightly different depending on its pupils, staffing, pace, budget, and local community. What's the starting point for a school when you begin looking at a different SEN pathway?
Well, when I became head, I would visit the classes with a new perspective. So I was now holding the purse strings, and I had the full accountability of every child's progress and attainment, as well as the responsibility for their well-being and personal development. Our Key Stage 2 data was not great. There was room for improvement in early years and phonics, and there were about 8 pupils who were not accessing learning at all. They were roaming the building, climbing trees, and we were firefighting behaviour. I won't tell you the words that I was called over that year. We had about 21 suspensions that year,
Okay.
which is quite high. I'd asked children with SEN questions about their learning when I was walking around the classrooms, and they would look at me with blank faces. A quote from one child was that he didn't need to listen, as eventually the adult would come and tell him the answer. So we were developing learned helplessness. But the books were showing me like 30 polished pieces of work with labeled plant diagrams. But if I asked a child to name me a part of a plant, they wouldn't be able to tell me the answer. So there was a real mismatch.
Okay. Okay. And so you've implemented three different pathways for different needs. Could you give us a broad overview of what those pathways look like and what they're designed to support?
Yeah. So one reason for the pathways really was when I was a Senko and I was doing an observation of a lesson, the class were reading How to Wash a Woolly Mammoth, that book, and the writing task for their English lesson was to write the instructions of how to wash a woolly mammoth. And one pupil with SEN scrawled the words, "You can't, they're extinct," across his page. Now, he wasn't wrong, was he? I went back to the head teacher at the time and I said, I just need to take the pupil out off the treadmill of the curriculum, teach him to read and write, and then pop him back. And then he can access all of his learning fully. And the pathways have allowed for that. And when I became head, I had the power to be able to do that. So we did start with a support base for those 8 children that were roaming the building, climbing trees. We started there, and I had a contact who previously worked for me, who I asked to set things up with me, and he helped launch the program. Worked really closely with parents to shape things, and the parents were mostly on board. We did lose one family, and unfortunately we were not able to meet the needs of one pupil, but their parent was so appreciative of what we tried, and we weren't his first school placement. So the lead teacher did use various methods and provision. the provision evolved. We did need to be brave and experimental, and what we had been doing hadn't been working. So I had to, I had to allow him to also try things out. And then from September 24, I sourced the most amazing teacher to take it over. She'd been a Senko in her previous school, and she was just born to lead this provision. She's got her own Instagram, teaching behaviour. It was a non-negotiable for me that all these pupils on the pathways and in any outlier classes were taught by highly skilled teachers with TA support, but they're led by teachers, not led by TAs. And we were also conscious that they needed to be a class in their own right for belonging. So all classes are named across the school, whether they're sort of your typical class or one of these support-based classes on the pathways. They're all named according to a national animal of a country that children are from in our school because of our high EAL numbers. And we evaluated after a year of having that one support base opened, and I questioned why only the children that were roaming the corridors and were presenting with challenging behaviour were the ones having their needs best met. I thought, what about those quiet ones who were still not thriving? And that's when the pathways were born. And we opened 2 other classes, and Leopard's class became the Flourish pathway. Then we opened Foxes and Jaguars class that became the Elevate pathway. And then the final pathway is called Empower. And that provision is what you would see most typically in most mainstream schools.
Yeah, I mean, what I see, especially at the moment, is a lot of schools rethinking their SEN provision and how they're going to sort of take up that challenge. It's on the agenda more and more whenever I speak to school leaders. With that, what do you think are the most practical questions they should be asking themselves before attempting to set up something like that?
I think they need to, obviously, they're going to talk about finance, and you just have to hold on to your vision and plan staffing with that ultimate goal in mind. Because so then, as people left, I kept that goal in mind, and we recruited to ensure that we had the right balance of teachers and teaching assistants to realise that vision. Also, space. It's schools are very. We've always done it this way. They tend to, and change is hard. And so it's not plentiful either space, is it? Took a blueprint of the building, and I just thought, how could we use it? Where would we put everything if it was a brand new building? So we had a room that was used for resources, and the stuff in there had been in some of it had been in there for donkey's years, and I moved all resources that we had across the building out into outdoor storage kind of sheds, and then every space in the building was used. If you could put children in it, if it had a window in one cupboard and electricity, then it's got children in it. And also my office. I had an office just for me. I now share an office with the deputy, the Senko, and the pastoral lead. That has added benefits that we didn't even realise.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when you're trying to shape a shared vision, I think, not to mention the sort of friendships and whatnot that comes of that. So when designing the pathways, creating different pathways allows people to access support in a more flexible way rather than being placed into one fixed model. How do you decide what each pathway should look like? So obviously you gave the instances of your different 3 that you'd implemented. What are the things that you think you should be thinking about that will get you to that sort of rationale?
So the mantra really for the pathways is stage, not age. I don't know if you've ever seen Ken Robinson's TED talk about how children being grouped in schools according to the year they were born is from the Industrial Revolution. Well, maybe we need to move on.
Okay.
We can secure the foundations for all the pupils more effectively if we group them according to the stage that they're at, not their chronological age. And all of our changes have been research led. So we use the EEF guidance, such as 5-a-day guidance and the metacognition and self-regulated learning guidance to influence what we're doing.
Okay. Is there any other kinds of guidance that you would use to influence what you're doing?
Yeah, so assessment, it's all assessment led, supported by professional judgment. So where a child might be showing signs that they're not age related or they're not making progress in the way that we feel they could, we analyse this. All schools will be doing this, all teachers will be doing this, but it's then what you do about it. It's there, but if it's difficulty accessing the curriculum, then you need to change the environments. If standardized assessments such as the YARC, we use the YARC for reading and Sandwell for maths to baseline children and to track children who are not keeping up. That is a That's a phrase that's coming out in the white paper about children helping children to keep up, not catch up. So it's catching the children early before they fall. And then these assessments are repeated every 6 months, and we review if the pupils are on the best pathways. It's not streaming. They can't move up and down. There's no up and down. It's just this environment, this staff, this ratio, this group of children will suit your need better than this one. You're going to be there.
What are the triggers then that help you identify that, apart from obviously you said you review every so often, but is there earlier signs that say actually this pathway might not be suitable to this particular pupil? We need to move them on to this other pathway.
I mean, nobody's actually moved between pathways like that. They tend to be, so all children essentially are on the Empower pathway. That's their chronological age class. So children are in two classes. They're in there with their peers, and they'll join those classes for things that they can access. So for the Flourish pathway, a lot of those children have really complex and maybe autism needs associated with autism, or sensory needs, or trauma needs. So they are more often in their leopards class, but then they will join their chronological age peer groups for break times, lunch times, trips. If they want to join them for maths, they'll join them for maths. If they want to join them for music, they'll join them for music. The Elevate pathway, we've got two classes in there, and one of those you will only join Fox's class if you need a better staff ratio for writing or maths or reading. You will be in your chronological age class the rest of the time. And then Jaguars, those children tend to all have EHCPs and for cognitive need, but they don't have those kind of same level of emotional needs. And so they will be in Jaguars for the mornings, having their English and maths needs met very bespokely, like one-to-one, in an environment that has got sort of sensory spaces if they need to have a break. And there's about 7 teacher and a TA, so it's high staff pupil ratio. But then most children in the afternoons rejoin their chronological age peers for the wider curriculum. Made other changes across the school. So the Empower pathway, for example, the environments we're looking at so that they are more favourable for cognitive load for pupils. And we've increased technology using the EEF guidance again to support with scaffolding and teaching more to children. So we use a Century for science teaching because it's AI led. So they go at their pace within the unit on forces or whatever it might be, and it teaches and reteaches and takes them through their learning very privately and on a one-to-one with the platform.
So a lot of schools may like the idea of creating a more flexible SEN pathway, and I think, to be honest with you, a lot of parents would like that as well. Me being a parent and having having parent friends who have children with SEN needs, I'd certainly understand that challenge. But the real challenge is making it work day to day. What did the implementation actually look like, and was there any hurdles that you had to overcome?
I mean, yeah, there were loads of hurdles, and it evolved, and it doesn't happen overnight. Getting the right staff is vital. That takes time sometimes, but can't let things like that put you off. It's also making decisions based on practical barriers rather than what the children need. It's really, oh, we can't do that because that table won't fit in that room. It can really cloud your judgment about what you're going to do. I did it myself. I moved, the four of us, when we were going to share an office, I moved into the old library, and my office became the room for Jaguar's class. But they were 9 of them squeezed into that room, and 4 of us in this huge office. And that was because of the size of my desk that the previous head teacher had bought.
Yeah.
So I thought, I was like, get rid of the desks. We bought new desks and we swapped. And the behaviour changed for one pupil particularly. He was dysregulating quite often every day, stopped dysregulating completely just because the room was bigger and he had more space. So I was annoyed with myself for making that decision based on the desk size rather than what the children needed. But we all do it, don't we? I think also CPD, you need to have a really comprehensive CPD program across your school for SEN expertise. So our whole school undertake training with the British Dyslexia Association and with the Autism Education Trust. We're embarking on the Communication Friendly Schools program with LCAN next year. And then we do offer lots of targeted courses for teachers that have, particular needs in their class. If you need to go and you need to find out how to be the best teacher you can be for that child. And my budget, I allocate a big chunk of my budget to CPD.
That sounds amazing, and I think one thing that I've learned from our own staff team is if you keep continuously upskilling your staff, they're the ones who are sort of on the front line, and actually we should all be learning all the time, shouldn't we, to get better?
Yeah. Well, the teacher training is called initial teacher training. That's the clue is in the title.
Absolutely, yeah. It's like when you do your driving test, the learning starts the day after, I think. But anyway, so in a one-form entry school, staffing space and timetabling can be especially challenging. How have you made the model work with those limitations?
Our timetable is really strict and we don't veer away from it. And another reason for that is that we know that children love routine. And if you change routine, children don't like it. And then they're not their best selves in the classroom. So we are very strict with our routine. We have to be, because that's what our children need. And, the teachers it's a far greater demand on teachers working in a school with high levels of SEN need. Not only the admin demand with all the graduated pathway, my plan writing and referral forms, etc., but the expertise they have to have day to day in that classroom. If they've got a span of 6 years learning attainment in their rooms with 30 kids, even with a TA or two, that is really, really not conducive to all children having their needs met. Now the teachers from year 2 onwards, they in the Polish pathways, or any TAs from year 2 to year 6 in the uh, empower pathway classes, because there are fewer children in them. The span of need is less. You can do sort of 2-3 years span practically with 20 children, or 20 children in the year 5 classroom in the mornings during English and maths, because the others are on other pathways. So it works. It works if you stick to your timetables but yeah, if anyone's off sick,
Messes it up.
it's like,
Yeah, you say about children liking timetables, I think, and don't like change. I think that's similar to adults as well, if I'm honest. But
I think the staff like the timetable too, to be honest.
yeah. So, one of the things that I'm sort of really interested in is how have your families responded to the pathway model? Because from a parent point of view, and I think engaging with
Yeah.
children and sort of speaking to them about what you're doing and how that's working and demonstrating the difference. How did you find families have responded to what you've been doing?
I mean, we do exactly what you just said. When you are a parent, you send your child to school, you don't have a lot to compare that school to, do you?
No.
You've got your friends maybe, and social media can be a demon, can't it? It can really be quite toxic for parents and for schools. And you've got all this stuff coming at you. So you have to trust the school. But if you feel your child's needs aren't being met, go in and talk. And we've had that, some parents haven't liked that the children are getting. We don't want our children to be on this other pathway. They see it as a negative. But as soon as we bring them in and say, look, let me show you their English book before they were on it. Let me show you it now. They're like, okay, great, carry on.
I know when I've spoken to other head teachers, it can be some people are more take it more difficult to take on that their child might even have an SEN need, and other people might not. Do you find that?
Yeah, we do have that as well, and we just have to keep trying to convince them. We're in a system, we're in an education system. It's free at the point of delivery. There are limitations. It's poorly funded. The buildings are very hot today. We have to make the best we can with what we've got, and we just need to try to bring the parents on board like that, but also say within that model we have to be as flexible as we can with your child, and this is what we do here. At Gloucester Road we have such a huge number of high needs. In some ways it's easier for us because it doesn't look that different for anyone. Most children are doing something different. So that's our norm, and parents, we manage to convince them in the end. Some just take longer than others, and that's life.
Yeah, it's that change again. If you were starting again, is there anything that you do differently?
I said to you about the practical things. Don't let the practical things get in the way. I think also celebrate the successes more explicitly, like with parents. Like I said, Ofsted came in and asked one of our children a question that was in our leopards class: why is it great to be in leopards? And he said, because before I couldn't come to school and now I can. And his attendance went from 30% to 80%. We've got that data now, but in the early stages we didn't have that data. We've got that data. I have some spelling data where out of 16 children in 6 months, 12 children made a year plus progress, and 3 children made 2 years plus progress in 6 months on the
That's
pathways,
amazing. That's amazing.
And so the proof is in the pudding, isn't it? And once you have that, there's not really an argument to not change. And so yeah, just I don't know if I'd do anything different. I think you have to go through what you have to experiment. It's trial and error. Every school's got different children in it. You've got to just do what's right for your children and then evolve.
Do you have people or people outside that support you, like mentors or something that you can bounce ideas off? Do you have a good support network for yourself? Because I think sometimes being a head teacher can be a quite lonely place. I mean, I'm not a head teacher, but I am a sort of business leader, and I think that
Yeah,
can
yeah.
be quite a lonely place. So I imagine it's similar. So do you have that sort of support network that you can sort of bounce off if you need to?
I mean, like I said, Cheltenham is not particularly known for its diversity, is it? So we
Yeah,
do feel a little isolated. There's a couple of other schools that we kind of relate to, but there's a whole head teacher group in Cheltenham.
yeah,
So when we're together, we'll migrate in our little group if there's sort
yeah,
of 2 or 3 schools like ours,
yeah.
and so yeah, there's that support, but also we're a local authority school. We're not an academy part of an academy, so we've got people in the local authority that come in and celebrate with us, and then supervision is something that I provide for all staff, and I have that too. So we've got that independent kind of platform that you can have a good old whinge and a moan if you like.
And I suppose the whole point of this platform really is to, I mean, this podcast is to raise awareness of what you're doing. But I think the people that will be listening and watching this will be schools that are thinking of sort of going into what you've been doing. So what I would
Mhm.
really like to know is what advice would you give them?
You've got to start with your culture. You've got to just have a really good forensic look at, is your culture inclusive? Every school's going to say they're inclusive because that's what we all want. There's no teacher in the country that's not trying to do the best for the kids in their schools. But have a really good self-critical look at your model of
What
inclusion. Is it a
what
social model?
what are the questions
Is
you
it a
might ask
positive?
yourself? Yeah,
So I would say, is the language you use inclusive? We were using language. I did it. I didn't even notice it for a while. Like when we were talking about how well children were attaining, we were saying they were well below. That's not inclusive. That is a deficit language. Think about your language like that. How do you talk about the children? Look at your behaviour policy, your uniform policy. Is it flexible or is it rigid? Is it going to exclude lots of your children? A one size fits all model only fits one. So you just have to look at your culture, like your CPD as well. People are accidentally being uninclusive, and even all of your learning subject policies, your environments, are they inclusive? You've got to really have a forensic look at that, and how a teacher's talking about the children in the staff room. And you've got to get that inclusive culture first.
absolutely. So is there anything else that you might tell them apart from culture? Because I think culture is a massive thing, but what about
Mm.
operating? Is the systems or processes or stuff like that you might need to get in place to prior to taking on this challenge?
I think be brave, think stage, not age, just systems. We've all got the systems in our schools, assessment systems. Just make sure that they are showing your pupil attainment. Those pupils making those small, small steps of attainment. You need to have some kind of measure that's showing that what you're doing is working for those children. Think about your most complex child in your whole school. Make it work for them. It will work for everybody else.
If listeners only took one message away today, what would it be?
Yeah, I think that's it. Think stage, not age. Be creative, open-minded, be brave, and just, you do it for the children. If your children are happy, your staff are happy, your parents are happy.
Yeah.
And all of it just has a knock-on effect. By doing this for the children, we've made workload better for the teachers. Even things like we taken display boards down out of classrooms because that's workload. It's cognitive overload for the children. It reduces workload for the teachers. We're painting them white. We follow a Instagram account called Therapeutic Classrooms. It looks lovely. We've experimented with our Year 6 class. We put comfy chairs in the classroom. We've nicked them from the staff room and all over the place. And the children are now saying things like, so overheard a mum saying, "Oh, is this why we've got to get to the gate first so you can get this chair?" I mean, if you've got them in the building, that's the first hurdle, right?
Happy
You get
days,
them
yeah,
in the building. But just buy comfy chairs and it's solved.
absolutely. You don't think about things like that,
And
but I can really see that playing out in the playground and with a child
Yeah.
at home thinking, if I get there first, I can get on that chair. That's amazing.
Do you want to sit on a hard chair all day?
Unfortunately,
No.
no, I do, but yeah, not really.
But I always say to the staff, if you're an adult and if you are your experience as an adult, if children are the same. You don't want to have to wear horrible rigid clothes. You want to sit in a comfy chair for work. And think about your children's experience like that. What's okay in the workplace should be okay in schools, and vice versa. What's not okay for adults should not. We shouldn't be subjecting our children to, should we? I
Yeah.
would like even behaviour policies, punitive punishment. We don't get punished like that as adults unless we break the law. So we just have to be a little bit more rational about things and just think like that.
Well, Caroline, I've got to say, I've loved this conversation today. It's been really, 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 really good and really well thought out. Your answers have been amazing. So thanks
Thank
for that.
you.
And if I ever need if a head teacher ever approaches me about getting some advice, I'll be sending them your way.
Yeah,
That's
please
all
do.
right.
We get visitors, and thanks for the opportunity to do this.